Hey there. Welcome to Conscious Living with Irene Alexandra. I'm Irene, and I'm so glad you're here for this episode. The Conscious Living podcast is all about exploring the art of living consciously, how to reconnect with the magic that's already within you, and create a more mindful, intentional life. You're tuning into season 1, where we begin the journey of becoming a conscious educator. This season is packed with insights and practical strategies for teachers who want to transform their approach to teaching, better understand their students, and cultivate a more mindful and empowered classroom. Each episode will equip you with tools to bring more presence, awareness, and intention into your teaching. While this season is dedicated to educators, I firmly believe that anyone can benefit from this season, whether you're in education or not. As always, new episodes are released on Sundays. You can find the full season 1 guide on my website, irenealexandra.com. Take a look, see which episodes you're most excited to listen to, and be sure to share them with others who may enjoy or benefit from them as well. Now, a little housekeeping before we get to the good stuff. Please remember that this podcast is for educational purposes only. It's as if we're sitting on your back porch, sipping some freshly brewed coffee, and chatting about the complexities of life, which I love to do. I am not a medical or psychological professional, so please seek professional help if and when needed. That said, I have spent over a decade in education as a teacher, school leader, and teacher coach and mentor, specializing in special education and reading in early childhood through 8th grade. But I've also taught general education and gifted programs. I've also been a student of psychology and behavioral sciences for longer than I've been teaching. My interest in that was sparked when I was growing up, and it was reignited when I first started teaching. I immediately knew that the status quo of teaching was not for me. I wanted to dig deeper, to know better, and to do better. For more information about me and my professional and personal background, visit my website to get to know me more. Also, do not forget to get your free podcast playbook to accompany this podcast on my website, irenealexandra.com. The podcast playbook includes all the key points from today's episode, along with visuals, a transcript, reflection questions, and extra resources to help you follow along. My episodes are usually jam-packed with information, so I created this resource to better support your learning and understanding. I personally learn best with visuals and something to engage with while I listen. So if you're like me, this will be super helpful. Just head to my website and search for the title of this episode, and your free podcast playbook will pop right up, along with all of the ones from previous episodes. Again, my website is irenealexandra.com, and it can also be found in the description. Finally, if you're curious about working with me or exploring my current offerings, again, check out the description or head to my website for all of the details. Now, let's get into it. For years, I've struggled to make mindfulness a consistent part of my daily routine and lifestyle because I could not find strategies that fit my lifestyle and didn't require adding more tasks to my already jam-packed day. I wanted the growth and the benefits that come with mindfulness, and I wanted those around me, especially my students, to benefit from me embodying wellness and mindfulness. But the methods that I saw just did not work for me. You know, we've all seen those elaborate 5 a.m. morning routines or multi-step evening rituals that wellness gurus swear by. And don't get me wrong, there are benefits and value to those routines, and they do work for some people, and I love taking inspiration from them as well. However, as an educator and just where I am in my life, they left me feeling more stressed than balanced, especially when I couldn't check off every item on a routine checklist. I needed an easier access point, and that's exactly what I've discovered over the years. In today's episode, I'm sharing exactly what has worked for me and continues to work for me, and countless other educators and non-educators alike, showing how small shifts in our mindset and our approach to our daily responsibilities that we already have to do can make a big impact on us and our students, and of course, our families and friends and pets and loved ones. And one more important thing is that regulated teachers empower students. I'm going to say that again. Regulated teachers empower students. So if you're in education like me, you're not in it for the fame and fortune. You're in it to educate and empower all of the tiny humans in your classroom. You're in it to make sure that they don't become yet another statistic because you are teaching them how to read. You are teaching them how to do math. You are teaching them how to think critically. You are teaching them how to learn history so that it doesn't continue to repeat itself. And because you are here listening to this episode, you're also in it to make sure that you don't unintentionally contribute to their hardships in life. If this sounds like you, you're in the right place. True mindfulness and wellness is about shifting your relationship with what's already on your plate, rather than piling more tasks, even mindfulness tasks, onto your already overflowing plate. This typically happens in one of two ways. Number one, it helps you view what's already on your plate differently, and it gives you the space to reflect on what's important, what you need to keep, what you can change, if there's something you might be able to let go of, and ultimately identifying what is and is not serving you. Two, it helps you approach what's on your plate differently by changing how you approach your workload and the challenges you face. Over time, you'll find that you manage stress in healthier ways, and you'll begin to feel more balanced and grounded even during unpleasant moments. This is where the practical mindfulness tips come into play that we'll talk about in a little bit. You'll learn how to transform the mundane, everyday chores into purposeful and healing routines. This will ultimately allow you to have a more positive relationship with the demands of teaching and, frankly, the demands of life without it feeling like you're constantly running on empty. And I've definitely been there myself. This shift in perspective isn't just about seeing your tasks differently. It's about understanding the profound impact that your energy and your self-regulation has on your classroom. If you've been following along with previous episodes, we've explored concepts like mirror neurons, emotional contagions, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and what I like to call the unspoken curriculum. These are the things that shape your classroom environment in ways that go far beyond lesson plans or academic standards or data or any of that. Mirror neurons specifically show us how your emotional state directly influences your students. When you're regulated and steady and grounded and stable, you're modeling emotional resilience for them, even without saying a word. And if this is a newer concept for you, or if you'd like a refresher, I encourage you to go ahead and revisit those previous episodes to dive deeper. But here's the thing. When you prioritize your own well-being, you're not just helping yourself. You're actively creating a ripple effect in your classroom. Your calm energy gives your students the space to co-regulate with you, strengthening their own emotional skills. This ties directly into the unspoken curriculum, the energy, communication, and healing work that we unintentionally bring into the classroom that silently teaches our students how to navigate the world. Teaching isn't just about the content you deliver, it's about the connections you build. And that connection begins with you showing up as your best self. So, as we start to shift your relationship with your plate, keep this in mind. Your ability to shift your relationship with your responsibilities has the power to transform both your experience and your students' experiences. Now, let's begin with taking a look at what's on your plate, your responsibilities, commitments, and all the mental and emotional weight that you are carrying. Think of your plate as your life right now. What's taking up your time and energy? What are the things that you have to do, the things that you want to do, and even the things that you're doing just because you feel like you should? Here's another thing. This isn't about fixing anything right now. It's just about noticing. Take a look at your plate without judgment. Maybe it feels overloaded, like you've been piling things on without thinking, and now you don't even know where to start. Or maybe it feels a little empty, like something's missing, but you're not quite sure what. Either way, this is not about shaming yourself. It's about pausing to see exactly where you're at, because you cannot make changes until you understand what you're working with. One really simple way to do this is with what I call a plate check. You can do this mentally, or better yet, write it down. Get as creative as you like. Use images, Canva, scrapbook, art, you name it. List out all of the things that are currently taking up space in your life: work, family, social commitments, self-care, or the lack of it. I said it. Anything. And I mean everything. Just write it all down and take a step back. Don't overthink it, and definitely don't judge it. Whew, words are difficult for me today. Between you and me, I've recorded this about 5 times because words are that difficult for me today. So if I can push through, so can you. But really, just write it all down and notice what's there. As an example, earlier in my career, I was juggling work as a new teacher, teaching yoga, managing personal responsibilities, and struggling to stay consistent with mindfulness. I didn't realize how much I was piling onto my plate until I took a step back. One of the first things I did was take time to write down everything on my plate: my responsibilities, my to-dos, my obligations, and especially, and this is true for you too, make sure you do this, my mental and emotional load. Just because some of these things are not visible doesn't mean they don't weigh on you. This is the core of mindfulness, acknowledging even the unseen aspects like perspectives, mindsets, and how we feel about our responsibilities. I also took a moment to consider what I wanted on my plate: my goals, dreams, aspirations, the things that just weren't there yet but were really important to me and that I wanted to achieve. I wrote it all down, everything I could think of. That mental plate check made me see that I wasn't just carrying tasks. I was carrying expectations, guilt, and a lot of should-dos that just weren't serving me. This might be true for you as well. Or maybe you're someone who prides themselves on saying yes to everything. You're the go-to friend, the reliable coworker, or the family member who always shows up. You feel fulfilled knowing that you can be there for others. You're a service provider. But when you take a closer look, you might notice that saying yes to everyone all the time has left little room for saying yes to yourself. And that's not inherently bad. It's a pattern. Looking at your plate neutrally, without labeling it as good or bad, helps you better understand what the driving force behind this is. Remember, life itself is neutral. I'm going to say that again. Life itself is neutral, but it's our experiences, our values, and even the stories we've told ourselves about what it means to be a good person shape how we fill our plates. Recognizing this isn't about feeling guilty or defensive. It's about noticing it with curiosity and openness. Or maybe your plate looks deceptively manageable. From the outside, it seems like you've got a great balance, and people might think so too. But internally, you're still running on empty. This could mean that your mental or emotional load, that invisible weight of worrying about the future, replaying past conversations, or juggling emotional burdens, is taking up more space than you realize. These aren't things that you can see at a glance, but they're very real. And again, no judgment here, just an acknowledgement. When you view your mental and emotional commitments through this lens, it's easier to see them for what they are: thoughts and feelings that deserve compassion, not critique. This neutral perspective opens up the possibility for clarity and growth without adding unnecessary shame or pressure. Mindfulness starts with awareness. You can't bring mindfulness into your life if you don't understand what's already taken up space in it. So as we start to look at mindful ways to approach what's on your plate, remember that your ability to shift your relationship with your responsibilities has the power to transform your experiences and your student experiences, as well as the experiences of everyone else around you in your personal and professional lives. Now that we've taken a closer look at what's already on your plate, it is finally time to dive into how we can start integrating what I call practical wellness habits into your daily routine. So let's jump into some examples of what practical wellness could look like. This is by no means an extensive or exhaustive list of practical wellness or mindfulness techniques, but it does provide us with a really solid overview. If you're interested in learning more about this, check out your multisensory mindfulness toolkit on my website, irenealexandra.com. It's a downloadable product with 78 multisensory mindfulness technique cards for just $3.61. I'm not trying to make a fortune out of it. I want it to be accessible to as many people as possible, which is why I keep it at that price point no matter what happens to the economy. All information about that can be found in the description box and on my website. Again, it's irenealexandra.com. All right, let's start with examples of chores that you already have to do. Shower, clean, and commute. One of the best examples I can give is my post-work shower routine. Not post-workout, that's a different thing, but specifically post-work. About a year ago, I worked at one of the most toxic and abusive schools I've ever been in. My principal and most of the central office supervisors who worked at my school were extremely toxic, dramatic, and clueless when it came to supporting staff or students. The disorganization, the lack of empathy, the lack of clarity, and the horrendous communication styles were beyond anything I've previously experienced, and I've worked at a wide variety of schools. The environment was truly horrible, not just for me, but for everyone around me. It was like this trickle-down effect of negativity and toxicity. So, to cope while I was there, I created my very own non-negotiable shower routine. Every single day, like clockwork, I'd get home, take care of the dogs first, of course, by walking them and feeding them, and then I'd immediately strip off all my clothes and throw them directly into the washing machine, not even the hamper, right into the washer. And then I'd get right into the shower. I created the most cleansing and nourishing shower routine for myself that didn't take much more effort, but that smidge of extra effort made all the difference for me. I set the mood by catering to my senses. I like to prepare the environment ahead of time, so as I clean up at night, I'd make sure that things like my Himalayan salt lamp and candles were right there on my bathroom counter. My incense or essential oils were out. It literally took 2 seconds. And everything was ready for me to step into that sacred space after work. Sometimes I'd take a little bottle of essential oil and I'd put a few drops on the walls of the shower before I go in. That way the steam would release the scent and any healing properties of that essential oil. Music or sound was another must. Depending on the day, I'd play anything, including calming spa music, solfeggio frequencies, which if you don't know what they are, I highly recommend you check them out, spiritual tunes, or even old school R&B or early 2000s alternative rock. Whatever I needed emotionally. Or whatever I was just simply in the mood for and made me feel good. Sometimes I'd sip on some herbal tea or infused water to hydrate and nourish myself. If I did this is something that I'd usually prepare over the weekend so that it's stored in my fridge and I can easily enjoy it during the week. Once I'm in the shower, I'd let the water, the really hot as I can tolerate, water run from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes and down through the drain. Visualizing it washing away all of the lower vibrational and negative energy that had attached to me throughout the day was a game changer. Water is so powerful. Think about it. It's gentle enough to cleanse your skin, but strong enough to carve rivers through mountains. It's transformative. It's an alchemist. And I'd imagine all the negativity and stagnant energy from the day washing away and going down that drain. I take it a step further by using maybe my Korean mitt scrub or Korean scrub mitt. I always forget what it's called, but that item. Or to use my homemade body wash made with Castile soap, honey, castor oil, and essential oils. Or my homemade body scrubs made with sugar or salt or a mixture of the two with different oils, essential oils as well, to physically scrub away the day. Each motion of scrubbing or washing was intentional as I was scrubbing and washing away the unwanted energy and emotions from that day. Whenever I got out, I'd apply my homemade body butters or oils made with things like shea butter, oils, essential oils, again, just to replenish and restore myself. Afterward, with a clean and energetically cleansed body in clean clothes, I felt like me again. I felt so good. Now, you do not have to go as crazy as I do. I love making homemade products. It's what I do. It's what makes me feel good. And so that's doesn't feel like an extra thing for me because it's already part of my routine for years and years and years. And you don't have to do as much as I do. Frankly, just using your mindset, your visualizations, and your intentions in the shower without all of the extra things is more than enough. And frankly, there are moments when I do just that too, without all the extra things. So don't feel pressured to make it as much as I do, but you're going to be showering anyway, so you might as well use it intentionally. Another example is cleaning. You have to clean anyway again, right? You have to do the dishes, you have to wipe down the counters, clean the toilet, make your bed. So why not make it a mindfulness practice? When I clean, the first thing I do is open the blinds and the windows. If the weather allows, I'll open the windows more. And if not, I'll just do it a little crack, just a little bit. Why? Because sunlight and fresh air have energy, healing and powerful energy. They're cleansing, they're healing, and they can elevate your mood without you even doing anything. One of my favorite qualities of them. Let the sunlight and fresh air do their part of the work for you. I also, again, you're talking to the girl who makes all of her own products. But again, it's so easy and it's so simple and it's so cheap and it's so much better for you. My all-purpose cleaner is made with half filtered water and half rubbing alcohol and essential oils. That's it. Rubbing alcohol is amazing. It's what hospitals use for disinfecting. So if it's good enough for them, it's more than good enough for me. I'll customize the essential oils depending on my mood or how I'm feeling. You can use like the more traditional lavender or a lemon for calmness or energy. I love to use more like, ancient essential oils. And when I say ancient, there's just a lot of the essential oils that were used more so during ancient times. Things like frankincense, amber, myrrh. I actually have my own, what I call like ancient goddess essential oil blend that I make at home with a bunch of different scents. To me, it just smells the best. So I will usually gravitate towards that because that's what makes me feel good. But sometimes, especially when the springtime is coming, I want something more fresh. So I'll do like lemon or orange or something like that. Keep it interesting. But either way, as I clean, spraying, scrubbing, wiping, I visualize myself literally wiping away that stagnant energy. I might have, similar to the shower routine, I might have music playing, or I'll use essential oil diffusers, incense, or even a simmer pot if it's in the winter. You get some orange peels and, cloves and cinnamon sticks and stuff like that. Make it fun. But using all the senses again, sight, sound, scent, touch, makes feeling clean excuse me for the words. I'm not going to re-record this. So thank you for bearing with me. Makes cleaning feel less like a chore and more like a chance to rest or reset. It's easy to turn something that you already have to do into something intentional and nourishing and, dare I say, enjoyable. This is coming from someone who does not like to clean, but I love the energy that I feel after I clean. Moving on to commuting. Commuting is inevitable. Whether you are driving, walking, biking, or in public transportation, it is something that you have to do. Unless you're one of those lucky teachers who still works from home. And if you are, I envy your work-life balance. Hopefully you have a good one. But unless you're one of those teachers, commuting is part of your daily routine. So here's the thing. Your commute does not have to feel like wasted time. I know people who commute for like an hour or they have to transfer from like bus to train to walking. It can feel like a lot and it can feel overwhelming. I get it. I've been there. However, it can actually be one of the most intentional and valuable parts of your day. So for me, again, the key is music or sounds. For example, one of the things I do is that I create playlists ahead of time based on my mood, goals, and the type of day that I anticipate on having. If I know I'm having a jam-packed day with a to-do list that is a mile long, I might pull up a playlist with an upbeat, high-energy tracks. Something like Eminem's Lose Yourself, or really, frankly, anything from Eminem, or dancehall music. I grew up listening to dancehall. I love it. It makes me feel good and it gets me like energized and excited and going. It's all about getting into the mindset of tackling the day. Or on days when I'm excited, I might feel like a child on Christmas, like when I have something fun to look forward to or something special is happening. I might have a playlist that really amplifies that feeling. Something that does that for me, it might not do it for everyone, but something that does it for me is Arabic trap. Do not knock it till you've tried it. I see you judging me. Do not do that. Check it out first. And then if you don't like it, then so be it. Or just like fun pop music. There's also a playlist for harder days, or the ones where I feel nervous, like when I have an important meeting or something of more gravity is taking place. That playlist is full of songs that build my confidence and remind me to breathe through the nerves. Whatever the mood, I've created a playlist with a specific title that caters to it, and I use it to regulate my energy and emotions before I even walk into work. Now, the commute home is just as important. For me, it can be about resetting and transitioning out of work mode, but it's also not just about winding down. Sometimes I'll listen to music that helps me process the day, like something emotional or reflective. Other times, I just need to I'm going to tell you a funny thing my grandma tells me. My grandma, when I was telling her about and this is totally off the cuff, I'm not even looking at my script right now. So excuse me if my words are all over the place. My grandma, she's the best. She told me when I was telling her about my shower routine that I just explained to you, actually. She says that what she does when she would get home from work, she's retired now, but when she had like a bad day, she said she would poop it out. She would poop out the bad day. And once it was out of your body and pooped and flushed down the toilet, that it was gone and she was moving on with other things. So that's what came to my mind as I'm reading this. Sometimes you just have to shake off the stress and frustration, or as my grandma or my yaya says, poop it out, so that I will, in those times put on something maybe loud and cathartic. Maybe cathartic for me, I'm thinking of like loud, like metal music or something that like is like very, very loud and kind of boisterous, where I can just yell it out. Or sometimes, it just depends. Maybe a calming playlist. If you need a cry, give yourself a cry. But whatever it is, ultimately, with me rambling about all of this, is to create different playlists for different purposes and different moods, and ideally create them ahead of time so that you're prepared. I'm all about proactivity and being prepared. So you could also choose to use a podcast or an audiobook. It doesn't have to be music. Ultimately, it's just something with sound, something that you're listening to, using that hearing sense. Because if you're commuting, especially if you're driving, that's pretty much all you can do, unless you have like a cup of coffee that you always look forward to when you wake up and you have that next to you and it's like your emotional companion. That's a great thing to do too. But for the purpose of using sound during your commute, yes, so you can use an audio book or a podcast, and make sure you're choosing it purposefully and intently based on whatever your emotional, mental, psychological needs are. Or if you're on the silent commute team, which I've been there many a times, either intentionally or unintentionally, you may choose to focus your mindset and thoughts and use it as a time for reflections, affirmations, intention setting, sometimes crying. You have to let it out sometimes. But the point is, again, the commute both to and from work is more than just a way to get somewhere. It's an opportunity to set the tone for the day or to reclaim it at the end. Using music, podcasts, solfeggio frequencies, audiobooks, or your mindset intentionally allows you to proactively regulate your energy, focus, and emotions. Also, as educators, it's often the little things that we do throughout the day that can make a big difference. Here are a few more strategies to consider, ones that don't require a huge time commitment, but can still have a meaningful impact on your energy, mindset, and well-being. The first is mindful multitasking. So we just talked about a few examples of mindful multitasking, like turning your shower into a mindfulness moment, cleaning as a way to clear the energy of your space, or using your commute as a walking meditation. And if I'm being honest, I'm not typically a fan of multitasking. I'd rather enjoy mindfulness as its own moment where I can fully focus on being present. But let's face it, that's not always practical or even possible. Life gets busy, we all know this, and sometimes you have to meet yourself exactly where you are. That's the whole point of this episode. Mindful multitasking isn't about cramming more into your day or overloading yourself. It's about finding little ways to bring intention to the things that you're already doing. So, for example, if you're already cleaning to reset your space, you could turn it into a mini workout by adding light weights or wearing a weighted vest. This is something I personally do because as an educator with a lot of responsibilities, you know the deal, I find it quite challenging to have time to work out. Again, I already have to do housework or walk the dogs, so I may as well make the most of it whenever I can. It's just one layer of intention onto something that you're already doing to benefit both your body and your mind and ultimately your well-being. At its core, mindful multitasking is about turning the mundane chores into something powerful, something purposeful that supports your well-being. It's not about doing everything perfectly, but it is about finding what works for you and helps you feel a little more grounded, even on the busiest of days. Now, sometimes what you need most is to reset. No multitasking, no overthinking, just taking a moment to clear your mind and reconnect with yourself. One of the simplest ways to do that is with a reset walk. During lunch or prep, step outside and get some fresh air. If the weather's nice, a quick 10-minute walk can do wonders for your focus and energy. The purpose of this isn't to squeeze in another task, but to give yourself a break you need to recharge. Now, if you want to add a fitness element, of course, you can throw on a weighted vest or a heavy backpack. Just make sure it's supportive and comfortable to avoid any potential injuries. But honestly, if that feels like too much at the moment, skip it. This is about resetting, not overloading yourself. And again, there's a level of intuition that kind of comes with this, and knowing yourself and knowing your body and knowing what's good for you and choosing to be flexible in the moment about what you need. Also, if walking isn't your thing or if stepping outside isn't an option, there are so many other ways to move and reset. Stretching is a great alternative, and it doesn't have to be fancy. You can even just think back to simple stretches from PE class. You can join a PE class if you'd like. You can even just keep your butt in your chair and do some gentle chair stretches right at your desk. If you want a little guidance, YouTube University has tons of 5-minute stretch routines in your chair, out of your chair, and Pinterest or Google are also a great tool for quick visual guides. If you're having one of those days, though, where time just feels non-existent, and we've all been there, turn it into a group activity with your students. Reset movement isn't just for you, it can benefit them too. Or if you're at home, do it with your children or your spouse or your family. Put on some calming music, hello YouTube, dim the lights, or rely on natural light to create a soothing atmosphere. Lead a quick stretch session. And when I say lead, I mean let YouTube lead it. Less work for you. Not only does it help you reset, but it can also model self-care and mindfulness for your students or whoever you're doing this with. At the end of the day, this is about giving yourself the same grace that you give your students when you schedule, for example, brain breaks for them. You deserve that space to breathe and recharge, whether it's a walk, a stretch, or even a few deep breaths. Small moments of intentional movement can make all the difference in how you show up for the rest of your day. Moving on to the 5 senses exercise. It is one of the simplest ways to ground yourself in the present moment. I do this myself. I've shared it with friends and family, and I also support my students with this as well. You can follow the classic 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 structure where you identify 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste. Or just keep it simple by identifying one of each sense. This doesn't have to be rigid. The goal is to bring yourself back to the here and now in a way that feels good to you. Beyond this practice, it's important to acknowledge how your environment impacts your sensory experience and overall regulation. This is where environmental psychology plays a major role. This is something where later on in the season, I do have an episode dedicated specifically to this, but it's important enough to at least touch on it right now. The way you design and maintain your space can help to support sensory regulation, which in turn contributes to emotional balance, energetic balance, and mental clarity. Let's discuss the 5 senses within the context of your environment. We'll start with the visuals. Our visual space matters. A clutter-free environment and an organized environment that's clean and organized, you know the difference between the two, promotes focus and calm, while overly busy or chaotic or messy, dirty, filthy spaces can feel overwhelming. The same is with color. You've walked into schools where, back in the day, it's like color threw up on every single wall. There's no rhyme or reason to the colors. Everything's bold and in your face, and it's just chaotic. It's overwhelming. It's not good for the nervous system. It's not good for you. It doesn't promote the sense of nurturing and calming and balance that it has the potential to. So that leads me to the point of be intentional about your color palette. Choose soothing tones or neutrals, or if you want to choose color, obviously you choose color. I am not saying not to choose color, but be intentional about it. Maybe muted, maybe explore different kinds of greens or different kinds of blues. So it's not just that typical primary color that's in your face. You should also bring in elements of nature like plants to add vibrancy and grounding energy to your space. I'm going to be very specific. No fake plants. No fake plants. Nope. There's no chi there. There's no energy there. No life force energy. No. If you're going to do a plant, real plants are the direction that you should go. They connect you to the earth and they promote a sense of life. They are a form, a symbol of energy and growth in life. Moving on to sounds. Sound is another powerful way to set the tone for your environment. Consider calming background music, ambient sounds, or even solfeggio frequencies if you want to explore something deeper. YouTube has an endless supply of options, whether it's soft rain, ocean waves, or healing melodies. There is something for everyone. I am actually going to create my own playlist on YouTube that has different ambient sounds and different just sound and frequency videos that I personally gravitate to and enjoy. I also am linking the source, the woman who created the sound that I use in this episode and will be using in future episodes, in the description. She's one of my favorites. She's incredible. I have several favorites and she's definitely in my top 3. So highly recommend just exploring some of these to keep in the background. And at a later time, I'll tell you what I do with solfeggio frequencies overnight. So stay tuned for that. Super, super powerful. Now we're going to move on to scent, freshness, the air. Make sure the air is circulating. Open a window, get some fresh air flowing whenever possible. Avoid toxic sprays like Febreze or Lysol. I cannot tell you how many times people have just walked into my classroom or my room, at work, my office, whatever, and have just sprayed the stuff there. And it like fills up the hall. Anytime they hear anyone cough or anyone gets a sniffle or gets sick, that's their go-to. And I'm here to tell you, stop that. Stop that. You are just spraying chemicals in the air that disrupt people's immune system and hormones and can actually contribute to making people, including your students and staff, more sick. Stop it. Instead, use actually the same exact recipe that I use for my all-purpose cleaner. It's also a disinfectant, like I mentioned before. It could be used as in place of Febreze. It could be used as linen sprays for your couch, for furniture, for the air. The list goes on. Again, it is just half filtered water, half rubbing alcohol, and whatever essential oils you choose to use at that time. It's the easiest, simplest, cleanest way to disinfect a space, as well as clean up the air. Again, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. If rubbing alcohol is good enough for hospitals to disinfect and cleanse, it is good enough for me, and it should be good enough for you. Now, moving on to taste, this one can be a little trickier to incorporate into your environment. However, having something nourishing nearby can help, whether it's a warm, cozy drink on a cold day or something light and refreshing in the heat. Just think about how your sense of taste can play a role in grounding you. I love iced teas with fruit infusions or fun mocktails. I'm so glad mocktails are a thing nowadays. They were not about a decade ago when I started making them on my own. Alcohol just isn't my thing. I don't prefer it. I might have like a sip of champagne or something once a year, but I love, love, love mocktails and getting fun with drinks, with fruits and herbs and teas. It's so fun for me. But these things can help you feel like you're getting a little treat during the day, and they're quite simple to make. Now, onto the sense of touch, your environment should feel as good as it looks, whether it's soft blankets, cozy clothing, or structured furniture that helps to support your body. Just make sure that it's intentional. And no, do not go out and buy things. I'm not telling you to go to Target or Amazon, God forbid. Don't do any of that. Use what you have, because I guarantee you already have things that support a cozy environment. All right, so we've talked a lot about practical ways to bring mindfulness into your day-to-day life, like physical practices like movement, breathing, adjusting your environment, but we haven't fully explored your inner world yet, the thoughts and emotions that shape your experience from within. This is such an important part of mindfulness, and it's something we'll continue to dive into. For now, let's start with one key aspect: acknowledging and identifying your emotions. Stress and overwhelm are natural parts of life, but they don't have to take over. So when those feelings arise, the first step is to pause and notice them. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What is triggering these emotions? Maybe it's a tight deadline, an overloaded schedule, or just general exhaustion. Whatever the reason, try to name the emotion. Whether it's anxiety, frustration, sadness, or even confusion. Naming the emotion or emotions is such a simple yet powerful act. It helps you step out of the spiral and create space for self-awareness. You're not trying to fix or erase the feeling immediately. It's about recognizing and making room for it. Sometimes just saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed because I have too much on my plate, is enough to ground yourself or to start grounding yourself. This is especially true in a world where emotions are shunned or we're taught to suppress them and to not be emotional. A very loaded topic that I'm very passionate about and cannot wait to dive into in another episode. Because contrary to popular belief, emotions are not the devil. They are far from it. Emotions are extremely powerful learning and manifestation tools. Your emotions shape your past, present, and future. Even those who claim to not show their emotions are actually showing their emotions in that exact moment. Think about it. And if you take some time with a pinch of vulnerability, you can learn a lot about yourself by developing a healthy relationship with your emotions. Plus, wouldn't you prefer to have a healthy relationship with your emotions rather than letting your impulsive and reactive amygdala run the show? Right. So identifying your emotions might not solve the problem right then and there, again, but it does bring a sense of clarity and control. If you download the podcast playbook for this episode, I have an extra resource in there of a SEL series and resources that I use with my students that I honestly swear by. It's a game changer. I'm slowly starting to see it come up in school, so you may already be aware of it. If not, go ahead, download the playbook. It's free, and I hope that you get some benefit out of it as well. And some other ways to help identify and acknowledge your emotions include journaling. And I know we've heard about this time and time again, but there's so much more to journaling than people may even realize. Yes, you can journal, like writing an entry each day, and that's totally fine, but there's other ways to journal. You could do journals of your dreams. You can do like a bullet journal. Those are, I don't know if those are still a thing nowadays, but you can totally do something like that. Look it up. What I prefer though is automatic writing or automatic journaling, where I know that my brain feels very congested and clouded with different words and ideas and thoughts and emotions. And so I'll just take a page of my journal or a random page or whatever I have in front of me, and I'll write. I'll write whatever stream of thought comes out of my head. I don't care about spelling. I don't care about sentence structure or punctuation. I don't really even care if it makes sense. But I'm just going to write any words that come out of my head, even if it's like some kind of symbol or an image, write it down. And once I feel like I'm done, I'll read it back to myself. And more often than not, I am shocked at what I've read because, it could be for a number of things. It could be that I did not realize that those things were what was in my head. It could be I came to a realization or I understand myself better, or, which is the point of all of this, I learned more about myself, right? So that's one option that you can do. Or you can, if you're more in the artsy side, you can do an art journal or art therapy. Really, the options are endless. And again, this is just the beginning of a much larger topic. And we will continue to explore ways to connect with your inner world in more depth. But for now, try practicing these small acts of self-awareness, whether it's naming your emotions, journaling your thoughts, or simply pausing to ask yourself, what can I do to support myself right now? These moments can create a powerful ripple effect in your well-being. Remember, these practices are about being intentional with your time and energy. You don't need to wait for a perfect moment or a big break in your day to take care of yourself. If you can't do as much mindfulness as you'd like in a specific moment, that is okay. Even the smallest, most meaningful actions like taking a breath, naming how you're feeling, or stepping outside for a minute can help you recharge, reset, and keep moving forward, even on your busiest of days. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you know we've talked about how these actions connect to your brain's CEO, or the prefrontal cortex, and your amygdala, or your brain's bouncer or bodyguard, or as I like to call her, Big Amy. Who is the emotional processing center. The prefrontal cortex helps with planning, decision-making, and staying calm under pressure. It's the part of your brain that helps think clearly and makes the big decisions, especially when things feel chaotic. However, Big Amy, on the other hand, is the bouncer, and she's in charge of identifying threats and activating that fight, flight, or freeze or fawn response. When Big Amy identifies something as a threat or a perceived threat, she takes over, the prefrontal cortex gets put on pause. That's why you might feel foggy, mental fatigue, impulsive, or unable to think clearly when you're stressed. But mindfulness practices, no matter how small, help to calm Big Amy down, letting your prefrontal cortex step back in and take charge. This is huge, not just for you, but for your classroom and your students too. When you're able to self-regulate, it creates a ripple effect. You're more patient, more present, and better equipped to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. And when you model this kind of self-regulation, your students notice. It helps create a classroom environment where calm and intentionality are the norm, and that's something they can carry with them long after the school day is over. So don't underestimate the power of those small actions. Every breath, every pause, every intentional, mindful moment you take to ground yourself, it's not just helping you in the moment. It is rewiring your brain, empowering your prefrontal cortex, and showing Big Amy that everything's okay. It's also showing those people around you, whether students, colleagues, or loved ones, what it looks like to take care of yourself while showing up for others. Today, we explored how mindfulness can fit into your life without being overwhelming. First, we talked about understanding what's on your plate and how mindfulness starts with awareness. You can't bring mindfulness into your life if you don't understand what's already taken up space in it. Then we looked at ways to practice mindfulness in your everyday routine and how mindfulness doesn't have to be separate from your life. It can and should be a part of it. Start small and focus on integrating it into your existing routines. Before we close out this episode, I want to note that everything in this podcast is meant to support you, not to make you feel overwhelmed or inadequate. Do not try to do or adapt everything all at once. Don't do that, silly goose. Go at a pace instead that is healthy and manageable for you. Take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. What works for you now might change in the future, and that's okay. And actually, instead of leaving the rest behind, put it in a toolkit, put it in the toolbox, right? Keep it by your side and file it, put it away so that when the time comes when you may need that, it's already there. My hope, however, is that you find at least one practice or idea that makes a difference in both your professional and personal life. I do have your weekly challenge because this episode is a bit longer than usual. I am going to keep the weekly challenge in the podcast playbook. Again, if you download the free podcast playbook on my website, irenealexandra.com, you will see the weekly challenge there. It is one of my favorite weekly challenges, so I definitely hope that you go ahead and download it for yourself. As always, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, or whatever is fitting for the platform you're listening on so that you don't miss an episode of Conscious Living with Irene Alexandra. Remember to be the light that helps others see the light within themselves. I'll see you next time.